Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Late Night Learning. I am your host, Dr. Anthony Plomba. Now today we're going to be wrapping up our second lecture on social media marketing. In our last lecture, we talked about the LARA framework, we talked about social listening, and we talked about really thinking about ways in which we can connect with consumers. In this lecture, we're going to be delving further on into social media marketing, talking about beaconing and talking about different times in which we can reach out to customers, different times in which we can broadcast, if you will, different kinds of social media campaigns. So without further ado, let's get started. Social consumers. So we also have to think about here market segmentation, which is based around needs and characteristics of customers. So in our last lecture, we were really talking about different kinds of strategies in connecting with consumers. We talked about Amex, we talked about hashtag Amex163, different ways in which we can humanize particular companies through social media marketing. Basis of segmentation marketers use when they divide a population into manageable groups. So segmentation has bases around it. So we're able to get a better sense of who these people are when we're targeting them. We can also employ geographic segmentation, which refers to segmenting markets, which may be regional, country, market size, market density, or climate. So it may be dependent on those types of segmentation. Additionally, we have geofencing and targeting, fencing in offers around consumers in a target area. And lastly, we have beaconing, being sent offers from a given store. So I may know that you are near a particular store, and so my social media marketing team at American Eagle, at Hollister, at Abercrombie & Fitch may send you a coupon because you are within a 5-mile radius of a store. And so this saves costs, so to speak, because I am only targeting people who may have some interest in being at my store. Let's keep going. Segmentation. Demographic segmentation. Marketers may use common characteristics including age, gender, income, ethnic background, education, family life cycle, and occupation. So I may be clustering together doctors or lawyers, or I may be trying to find African Americans, or I may be trying to find females for that matter. The benefit here is that segmentation groups allow us to find people who are seeking benefits from the products in the market. And this is most common with cars. So when I was at the University of Florida, I saw Zip cars. Zip cars were everywhere. And so with these Zip cars function as kind of an introduction, if you will, in car ownership. So you may see Hondas that you can drive across campus, or Toyotas, or other small cars. But that's because they're trying to get you loyal, if you will, or get you used to a particular car so that you'll come to a dealership and make that purchase. We also have psychographic segmentation, and you can slice the market based on personality, motives, lifestyle, attitudes, and opinions. I did do this with a recent study that was published in which I looked at demographics, personalities, and lifestyles of movie consumers, and I looked to see if these could serve as really key predictors in movie platform consumption and movie genre consumption. And so, in fact, it is possible to group people based on personality and motives and lifestyle and attitudes. What I will say is the following, though. Because you perceive yourself to be funny or kind or mean or lazy doesn't mean that it's so. We're relying on consumers' perceived notions of themselves. But it doesn't mean that it still can't be predictive. And that's kind of the key idea here, is that even if segmentation studies might fall on a particular fallacy with relying on how people perceive themselves, which, again, we're terrible in evaluating who we are and what we are as people, if these variables still serve as predictive indicators, well, then you have something here. And so that's kind of something that's important to note here as well. Let's keep going. Psychographics case study. The greeting card industry has been down for some time. Unity Marketing conducted a psychographic segmentation study among greeting card buyers. The largest segment, known as the alternative seeker, is the most eager to use an alternative to the traditional card. And so this is an opportunity, right? This is an opportunity to get a sense of what these particular customers may want that may be different from a traditional card. And the greeting card industry may want to rethink different alternatives. Maybe sending something digitally to someone, or sending gifts, or sending something else that is kind of related to a traditional card, but is something different. Let's keep going. Hashtags and handles. Hashtags and handles are very important to understand when we're thinking about ways in which to follow people and ways in which to segment people. A handle is a nickname, it's a digital identification. And so we know Twitter handles exist for companies like the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, et cetera, et cetera. Hashtag is a word or phrase comprised of letters, numbers, and or emojis for that matter. So a hashtag, different from a handle, is a grouping of posts that just mention the hashtag itself. Whereas with a handle, it's under the auspices or under the control of, or under the mantle of, the New York Times or the New York Giants or the New York Yankees, right? Each of these teams and services for that matter have their own handle. And through this handle, they're able to control the types of videos and photos and other things that are posted. Hashtags differently group messages, related messages together, group related videos together. Let's keep going. Motivations behind social media use. If we're going to be thinking about how we segment people together and how we collect people together, it's important to think about motivations behind social media use. So there is the affinity impulse, there's the ability to express love, admiration, or liking behind individuals and reference groups. So people like to be expressive. After all, that's part of the human experience. Additionally, there's also personal utility, our own individual benefits that we seek out. Social media participation truly as community participation. We do see social media participation as community participation. You're participating with other people who love collecting rocks. You're participating with other people who love to shop a particular fashion brand. There's also the immediacy impulse. People have a natural drive to feel a sense of psychological closeness to others. And so there is a closeness when we find people who we can relate to, who share our same beliefs and values. Altruistic impulse. Some participate in social media as a way to do something good. There's also the curiosity impulse when people use social media to gain new knowledge and stimulate intellectual interests. And finally, there is the validation impulse. Social media focuses intently on the individual. You can share as much or as little of your opinions and activities as you like. And so for all of these different kinds of impulses and utilities, there are many different reasons why people come to social media. And so when we think about why people are posting something, how people are posting something, and for what end people post anything, have these impulses and utilities in the back of your mind. It'll be really, really helpful for you as you move along as a social media marketer. Let's keep going. Social technographics. This is based on research that is conducted on the social and digital lives of consumers. Forrester identified 6 types of people based on how those people use and interact with social media. This is based on how actively a segment uses social tools, how important those tools are within the stages of the customer life cycle, and how willing they engage with brands in social media. So we think about social stars, social savvies, social snackers, social skippers, right? That's an instance of creating consumer segmentations in which we're looking at how people use and interact with social media. And you can see that for each one of these profiles, there are different characteristics that are necessary here that comprise each profile. And some of you may be thinking this is very much like cluster analysis. This is exactly cluster analysis. Any kind of segmentation study often involves a cluster analysis of some degree. And so it follows suit that this would happen here. Let's keep going. Network structure and group influences. Social object theory can help explain how social networks thrive. And so social networks will be more effective if there is a way to activate relationships among people and objects. So, for instance, Facebook exploits groups, pages, and shares for that matter, right? There's a way to activate relationships around objects. And Facebook really has been publicizing groups for quite some time. It does not surprise me when I had the good fortune of flying out to Facebook for an interview. They talked about myself being a product manager and really taking over one of their products. One that was mentioned was groups as well as pages. And so I do think Facebook is really trying to pump up traffic on those particular features, if you will. There's also object sociality, the extent to which users can share an object in social media. There's unlimited access. That's what's really crazy about social media, is that there really is unlimited access. There's no cost to the company for people posting. There's no additional cost for people sharing. It's free. The information is free. Communication is free. And so the question is, how are you exploiting and capitalizing on that data to create insights, to create key performance indicators, and to really drive your business forward? Let's keep going. Google Analytics Session 2. Analytics tells us what happens, but we need to determine why. And that's important in this particular lecture. Now, I am going to record different kinds of Google Analytics videos to help you out with your class activities. That will happen for sure. So be patient with these Google Analytics sessions. I know that these are kind of stationary and fixed, but I do want to point out different things in the menus between this particular lecture and between the class videos that I will be recording for you, ladies and gentlemen. You should be okay moving forward on these assignments. Let's keep going. So, step one, when we're looking at particular Google Analytics, the main key here is to try to find an anomaly in the data set. Something that's off, something that doesn't make sense. If we're seeing a ripple in the data, if we're seeing something that just doesn't jive with us, just doesn't make sense to us, there's something off, then we're able to kind of look into it a bit further. So for instance here, we can see here on Wednesday, April 5th, 2017, there was a high rise here. The revenue shot up from $10,000 the previous day to nearly $60,000. Good grief. That's quite a spike. Was there a blog post by Google, a special deal? What caused this remarkable spike? Let's keep going. So here we can click on notes and we can look at annotated notes, if you will. Google Analytics is great in a company because your coworkers can write notes in to explain particular anomalies. So you can click notes here, and you can add to notes, and you can also read notes. So somebody may have an explanation for what's going on here. Let's keep going. Acquisition. We talked about this earlier in the last Google Analytics talk, but channels allow for viewing acquisitions. This includes users, new users, and sessions. It includes behavior, bounce rate, pages per session, average session duration, and goals. Your goals are usually, remember, conversion rate. You want people to buy you want people to buy your products, you want people to buy your services, you want there to be goal completion, and you want there to be goal earnings as well, right? We're looking at revenues, we're looking at how many sales we were able to gain and accrue here. So if we're looking at acquisitions, behavior, and goals, ABG, those are the three massive major steps in converting people from being a new user to having a conversion, then hopefully them just being users and repeatedly visiting your website. Let's keep going. Google Analytics. So this is the default channel group. You can toggle the way you view data in the row in the upright column here. And so you can see the arrow that I have here. You can toggle the way in which you're looking at default channels. So you can see on the left-hand side, I'm under acquisition. I've clicked on channel, right? Channel is in orange to the left-hand column, the most left-hand column. And here we can see where people are coming from. Are people doing an organic search to the store? Are they directly typing in Google Store URL? We have social here as well. Are people coming to us from social media? Are people coming from a search, which is known as a referral? There's also paid search here. And so there's also affiliates. And finally, there's also display. Was there an advertisement that was displayed for this store? And so as you can see here from this breakdown, this came about from an organic search. And so as we go through Google Analytics, you can see there are multiple ways in which we can see where traffic is coming from to the Google Store. Remember, all of this data is about the Google Store. Let's keep going. Default channel grouping using two metrics. You can use either column here to look at two different metrics. Looking at bounce from here, we want a low bounce rate, right? Remember, we want a very low bounce rate. It seems that if people are referred to our site, we are looking good. But it seems like if people are coming from social, if they're coming from affiliates, it's not so good. So we actually seem to have way more success. It seems with organic search, right? Because we can see here our organic search comprises about 47% of all users. So we can buy that. That's pretty good. We can also see here through referrals, we have about 14% of people, and direct, we have about 19% of people coming here. So these metrics and this kind of split of looking at two pieces of data is really, really informative when we're trying to make a decision about, through what channels are users finding themselves leaving, right? Just kind of bouncing away. So it doesn't seem like the organic search is a turnoff. What does seem to be a turnoff is social media a little bit more, paid search a little bit more, and display a little bit more. And so if we're thinking about the different ways in which that we display different kinds of advertisements for Google Analytics, if we're thinking about paid search, so if it's one of those searches that first comes up, that's a paid search, right? When we Google something, the first 2 or 3 things are usually advertisements. That's a paid search. And then social down here, it seems like those may not be the best mechanisms here to entice people to make the decision to come to Google Store, right? There might be different channels, different ways in which they're a little bit better, like referral, like direct, like organic search, right? Remember, the bottom most are the best here because they have the lower bounce rates, right? We can see with referral, 21.72%, direct, 41.33%. These are better. These are way, way better. Let's keep going. Comparison view. You can also toggle to compare to view to see which channels are performing better than others here. Social and referral bring about the same amount of traffic, but which performs better. We can see here that there are differences here. We can see here that with bounce rate and that with users, certain bounce rates are worse than others. And again, from our conversation previously, we can see here that certain bounce rates are better than others. And so we can see that referral fares a bit better. We can see that direct fares a bit better as well here. And so it's just really important to be mindful of how these users and bounce rates compare against each other here. Remember, green is good, lower is good, and so you want less bounce rates. You want lower bounce rates if possible here. And so if we go back to the last slide here with users and bounce rates here, remember we could see display, paid search, and social were not as good here. And so if we go to the next slide with display, paid search, and social, we can see a fluctuation here. We can see a fluctuation with which is better and which is worse when it comes to bounce rates. Let's keep going. Pivot view. So we can see here that we can pivot. You can see here that we can pivot data here, so we can look at it by users and revenue across different channels here. In other words, we have switched the rows and columns here, allowing us to have a different perspective. So we can see here that you can switch between users and revenue. And you can see in each of the columns, you can see user and revenue under the total column. You can see under organic search, users and revenue here. Under direct, you can see users and revenue here. Under social, you can see users and revenue, etc., etc. So this really allows you to break down the different kinds of channels and which channels harness the most users, but also wind up creating the highest conversion rates. Or, for the KPI in front of us, revenue. Let's keep going. Pivot view, so you can see here, again, this is just without all the clutter of the notes. You can see here the different kinds of pivots that are available here. And remember, to the left-handmost column, we are under acquisition, then channel. Let's keep going. Types of filters. This is just something to be mindful of as we move along here. Filters are very useful. They help us control and consolidate the data. You may only want data from African Americans. You may only want data from teenagers. So it's important to view filters and to be mindful of if you're using inline filters or advanced filters for that matter. Let's keep going. Traffic. Traffic is also important to use here as we're moving along. We can view here the different sources that are responsible for traffic onto the Google Merchandise or Store website. So we can see here Google Organic, YouTube. There are different kinds of traffic channels that are really, really useful. And under source medium, that's going to tell you where your traffic is coming from. And all you need to do is hover over each term or click on each term, and you'll have a definition of what each campaign means here. Let's keep going. As you can see here, a search with the term Google here, you can input Google right above if you only want source mediums that deal with Google. So these are cases where Google was in the domain of the source that brought traffic here. So where Google was mentioned, whether it was organic, whether it was other Google sites that led somebody over to the Google Store or Google Merchandise Store itself. So source traffic is really, really crucial here because as you can see, we have all of these KPIs in front of us. Acquisition, the second most left column, we have source medium first. The second most left column, we have acquisition. Within acquisition, users, new users, sessions, right? We want to know our users. We want to know how many are new. And we want sessions. We want to know how many views per person here. As we move into behavior, we have bounce rate. We can see the percentage of people who are leaving. We have about 41% who may leave as they go onto the landing page, but as we can see, that varies. We have pages per session. How many pages are people viewing per session, per time they visit the site? Average session duration is about 2 minutes and 38 seconds. Goal conversion rate, we get about sales from about 25% of people, and then goal completions there as well. And goal completions deal with campaigns that you might be erecting here. Let's keep going. Audience report language. You can also look at audience language as a way to separate out people and to get a better sense of who is coming to your site. Let's keep going. So audience report language, Spanish. There are multiple types of Spanish here, and as we can see here, we can see that there's Brazilian and Mexican and different kinds of languages that are spoken by your users. And again, this is a way in which to separate people out by language. You can also separate people out by location as well. So you can see the filter box here. This is useful for searches and manipulation of data as well here. But as you can see, we can separate people out based around languages spoken. A really great way to segment our audiences and to get a better sense of, well, does our website resonate with Mexicans? Does it resonate with El Salvadorians? What about Brazilians? We know that even though people may clump all of these cultures together as Latin American, we know that each culture is super diverse and very, very different from each other. And so it's important to have some sort of separation, and one way to do this is through language. Let's keep going. Advanced inline filter. This is another way to segment. This allows for advanced searches and the ability to customize views. Let's keep going. So you can do, for instance, a what about an or query, right? So you may say to yourself, you know, what if somebody is this and this here? So you may be looking here for traffic from YouTube and Facebook, but technically you can't organically conduct an or search since and is only available here. So there is a way to fix this, because as you can see, I have source mediums that contain YouTube and source mediums that contain Facebook. So this idea that traffic that deals with Facebook or traffic that deals with YouTube, right? Those sources driving people to my store. But as you can see, I have all zeros at the bottom because it doesn't work. There is a fix here though. Let's keep going. To do an OR query, use matching reg, exp here, and use an I as the OR query. So now the statement is filtering out data for only traffic from YouTube or Facebook. And I have that line in between both. Let's keep going. And so as you can see, then it is populated. Now I have a list of YouTube and Facebook. And I can see from which kinds of campaigns are people coming from. Is it just from a YouTube referral? Is it from paid search from YouTube? Whatever it may be, I can see which kinds of source mediums are working in really pushing people along to my website. Let's keep going. Advanced customization of primary dimension searches. You can see here that you can continue to customize your PD searches, adding a secondary search here. So I have the YouTube with that I in the middle, and then Facebook looking at the source mediums, right? Looking at how YouTube and Facebook related sources push traffic to my website. All the campaigns, all the advertisements, the mentions of the Google store, whatever it is on YouTube or Facebook. The previous slide illustrated all the different source channels, if you will, that really push traffic along. So here I have the average order value as well here. This is just kind of advanced. It's not something you're going to need to know, but it is important to be aware of. So average order value, are people ordering $10 or $20 or $30? Does the source medium, people coming from YouTube or Facebook websites or referrals or paid searches or discoveries onto the Google store, are they spending more? Average order value, right? How much are people spending? So as you can see here, there's a lot going on when we're thinking about Google Analytics and we're thinking about segmentation. I know that I've thrown a lot at you. There will be a class video that's going to explain this in live time. I recognize it's a little bit difficult trying to get through this, but this should give you an overview of what your second class activity with social media marketing will look like. As we can also see with social media marketing, there's quite a bit that goes on. It's just simply not enough to know what kind of communication you want to deliver. It's equally important to recognize who your customer segment is, who you're talking to, what they want out of your communication. And as we saw with Google Analytics, it's important to understand your source medium. Where is your traffic coming from? You invest dollars in some traffic, and in other traffic, it's kind of organic searches, right? You might find that people who search for Google Store on Google find it, click on it, and that might be the way in which most people find the website. So that's the acquisition. And then behavior, they may be clicking on a bunch of pages, the sessions per page, and then conversions, right? When we're thinking about goals, that might be the way that most people are spending their money on the Google store. So it's important to recognize that there are many complexities when it comes to Google Analytics. That's why we're going slow. That's why we're kind of inching our way in. Remember, you felt the same way when we started SPSS. You will get more comfortable with this as we move along. That's all the time we have on Late Night Learning. As always, keep laughing and keep learning.